Yeah, I think the way she should have dealt with that is to have gone to a meeting at Muni Hall and let Randy fix it.
Yeah, it might be on her property. Okay, any late items?
Did you have any on table the projects?
No, I actually
Okay.
did not. I ended up working on something else.
Okay, so no, nothing
So,
from me.
could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Sure.
Bonnie, Murray second, all in favor?
Passed unanimously.
Yeah. Adoption of the minutes from our December the
13th.
14th meeting. Any concerns, changes? Seeing none, motion to approve, Bonnie, Marie, all in favor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, no public comments. Review of action items from the December 14th meeting. So they're in the package.
Is that 9 o'clock?
8
No,
o'clock.
8 o'clock. Okay, sorry.
So first was Murray to advise Sophie when the lock block wall will begin. Any
Yeah.
update?
Kathy and I were supposed to meet with Bob Robinson last week on site to be, basically Bob has to have Kathy on site telling him what he can do and what he can't do. And he is not, so I've talked with Bob, I've met Bob, we've agreed on a lot of things and it just doesn't happen and it's next week country. And then last week we were supposed to finally meet down there and our meeting went long. Our committee of the whole meeting went a little longer than anticipated. And so now it's been pushed back again. So hopefully, any day now, it's certainly supposed to be at the top of Bob's list as soon as he could get a machine to go in there. And the theory is that we're just gonna level out as far back as he can and put some gravel down and have, open up the pickup drop-off area for now and see where it goes and see how the hydro pole affects us and et cetera. And whether or not he has bought any of the fancy split block, I don't know. And whether or not it was in last year's budget, so what he's doing for budget for this year. Last year he had 60,000, I think, or maybe it was the year before now, who even knows? He had 60.
You need to get going on this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll have snow, so the weather's been an impact.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't get done before the May long weekend, we're in deep trouble.
Do you think spring break is a good time? Because they don't have that 7:30 rush.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why not use that? That's a good suggestion.
That's
Yeah,
a really good
perfect, thank you.
suggestion.
Last 2 weeks of
Yeah.
March.
And then that gives us enough time to get the word out. What I don't want to have happen is for the work to begin and for no one to be prepared for it.
Yeah.
But the people arriving to catch the ferry at 7:30 in the morning and suddenly realizing.
Well, okay, but if we do it during spring break, but this is not, I mean, a machine moves a hell of a lot of dirt really quickly. This isn't a big construction project, right? This is, you bring in a high hoe and a dump truck, you can move a lot of material. So I kind of think you arrive at 10 or 9 o'clock in the morning.
I would also like to have a bylaw officer or somebody, a traffic control person from the muni there. And so we just have we just need some pre-warning to organize that as well. But if it's during spring break, it's going to be minimized, but if it's.
Yeah, and after rush hour. Right, I
Yeah.
mean, we're not gonna arrive there at 6:30 in the morning with everybody, you know, with a big bloody high hole in the middle of the road. That would be embarrassing. And not practical.
Okay. So who is doing what here? Are you following
I
up
will
further?
follow up again with my good friend Kathy.
So she's back next week.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll email her today.
Okay. And then there's a whole batch of items here that were assigned to Melanie. Do we have any update on these?
I have nothing on the school. I have nothing on the shelter, but BIMTAC's meeting next week, so it might come up there. Nothing on Cove Commons.
Oh, right, so that's Emma. Where's Emma at? Or was she invited?
She's not on the committee. She usually attends if she's got something she wants to present.
Okay.
So
Then following up with the Cove Commons regarding the bus shelter being included in Cove Commons fundraising, that actually was assigned to me,
Oh,
and it isn't included. So if we want a bus shelter there, we need to make that happen separately from the Cove Commons project.
Yeah, that would be a TransLink.
Do you want to bring that up for, do you want me to ask Emma to bring it up at FinTech?
Well, it would be something that Emma would bring up with TransLink to see if we can get some funding.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe the action there is find out from Emma if she's made any progress on the bus shelter.
And now, one thing on that Cardina project in general, once you get into putting sidewalk and bus thing in there, you know, Bob has a plan from Kevin, the Prius, to put sidewalk all the way down the street.
Yeah, I know.
And why? Right? I mean, this is a little dead-end street with a few cars parked on it.
Yeah.
And we have like, you know, 28 feet of sidewalk on Bowen Island. Why would we be building a sidewalk to nowhere
Yeah.
on a dead-end street? And that's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you lose those 10 parking spots, right?
That's the
The
feedback I've
precious,
gotten
the
as
precious
well.
parking spots.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that strikes me as being just a silly sort of nice picture for an architect, or for an engineer to draw, but out of context with the world.
So, I mean, that drawing, if I'm remembering correctly, has come to council. Is that right?
Well, Bob presented it as part of a package, right?
Right.
So here's the engineer drawing showing the Cardina corner, but it showed all this other stuff too, right? And whether or not it was approved by, well, it was never approved by council to go ahead because it's a budget consideration,
Right.
right? So it was always just report was received. And he was given authorization to proceed with something, but I doubt that we could have proceeded with all of it with no budget.
He was given the okay to proceed with the lock block,
Right.
the modification there, and
Yeah.
then the rest was subject to confirmation. But, I mean, if that's the feeling that that plan has just too much useless sidewalk
It's very
involved,
acidified.
it needs to get, that needs to get conveyed to BIMTech, because there were images of those drawings posted on social media and people responded positively.
Yeah.
And then other people responded with, not so much on social media, but other people responded with, that's a waste.
Yeah, like what? And having it run, having a sidewalk run to the Blue Cottage, to the tourist information and past the bus stop and in front of Cove Commons, very nice,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is,
That makes sense.
that's sort of the end of our developed area.
Yeah.
From there on, it's
And
park.
then you have parking lot, then you have your parking spots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to make a recommendation to FinTech?
We don't make recommendations directly to other committees.
No, we'd have to recommend to council.
We started doing that, though. But
You
you,
did?
you can ask that they recommend to council, or you can recommend to council.
But
Maybe this is just a conversation with Emma.
Yeah.
If Emma's bringing up the TransLink and the bus shelter and so on,
Just all that.
maybe just alert her to concerns.
And when I'm talking to Kathy and Bob about the corner,
Right.
um,
So let's parcel this into Murray's to-do list.
Okay.
So you'll be talking about the corner generally, and part of that will be expressing concern about the extent of the sidewalk.
Okay, that's an email to Kathy.
Yeah. Okay.
let me just bring up one more on that. And this is a Murray idea.
Okay.
Be forewarned. I think that we should be taking all of this dirt that we are pulling out of there and dropping it down on that lower Cardina corner near the lagoon, but on what would be the southeast corner. So if you're heading towards the lagoon and you're going to turn right towards the CNID, there's a giant low area there where it was actually chopped into the bank.
Mhm.
And I think that was probably done when they put in the water line to give them material to bury it and so on. So this probably goes back to the 1960s, but that area has been lowered and flattened out with a cut on the bank. And if we are going to ever put a traffic turnaround circle there, that whole area has to be filled in and brought up higher. So I just see the situation where we're going to come in and take all that stuff away and put it in a dump truck and take it up to Lot 1 or take it up to
Because-
our athletic park And then if the Creus drawing, as presented, ever goes ahead, then it's got to be hauled back down again to fill that in.
Right.
And I know that the Snug Point people will, who maybe squeal, just on general principles, because there's dirty dirt put down in our nice green ditch. But
Sorry, are you talking, can you explain what you're talking again?
okay, if you're driving towards the lagoon and you're going to turn right
Yeah.
to go to CNIB, right? And as you go around that corner to the right, if you notice that the property line is way back from the road, right? And that it has been cut out and is a very low spot. So one thing that we should incrementally be working on is building up that corner for the turnaround, because everybody says, well, you need a place for the buses to turn around, you need a traffic circle there, blah, blah, blah. Even the Snug Point people, I believe, would be in favor of a turnaround being built there. But it's a lot of money, so it's a matter of whether we save money now on working up on the block wall and filling that area in with fill. But in the interim, it isn't going to be pretty.
So perhaps that could be part of your conversation with Kathy and Bob,
Yeah.
just sort of figuring out more of the logistics of what's going on there. Are there any issues with moving dirt?
Well, so we're talking topsoil as opposed to digging down into the mineral, right? We're just talking the
We're-
dirt that's above.
Yeah,
ground
we're
there.
not talking glacial till. We're talking,
Yeah.
but we're not talking exclusively organic topsoil. We're talking about that middle layer, and we don't know what we're going to get.
Yeah, so just knowing whether, I have an opinion about it, with the arsenic, ubiquitously, I believe, but it's not substantiated by science. So we had trouble when we moved it was the mineral soil when we were doing the trenching, and then subsequently Hydro was doing their testing on it. And it
You
was,
mean going up the hill?
yeah.
There was arsenic in the glacial
Oh,
till?
there's arsenic. It's ubiquitous on Bowen, but
Right.
it's not proven scientifically that its background levels are everywhere. But there was also two other metals of concern, but it was above the standards that's permitted in the contaminated sites. So that's what, remember Hydro piled it up on the road to nowhere and was doing their testing, as they
Right.
do, and now they are gonna have to truck it off because it's actually above what's permitted. So they're gonna be doing that in the spring, trucking that mineral soil off island. So, but the
Where
good
do they
news,
take it?
to a landfill somewhere. I mean, it's gonna cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. It would be cheaper, I think, for them to prove that arsenic is ubiquitous here. That's my opinion anyway, but, but saying that, there's sort of these different tiers of contamination. So if you're within this much, concentration per parts per million, whatever it is,
Okay.
then you can move that soil from one location, the same roadway, to another. So
Right.
there you go. So that's fine. If it's above, if it's in the next tier, then you can't. But the
Right.
thing is that I don't think part of our process is to test the soil there. That's not. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not
I
in
mean,
our
we would-
right. We would
we-
just move it.
We would move it, and
Yeah.
then if somebody wanted to test it later, they could say, oh, this can't be
It's-
anywhere
yeah.
near. But
So-
we don't have any, I mean, our water table there is kind of a negligible thing. I guess you worry about infiltration into the ocean, but
I just
boy,
think it's here. I just think it's.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I
there
know, I
were
know
two
that.
other metals of concern, but they weren't at that second tier
right,
of contamination. It was cadmium and
manganese or
it was
magnesium.
cadmium and zinc or
Oh,
something like that. It was two other metals.
right.
So yeah.
So the things that are normally associated with gold
Yeah,
mining.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, like knowing that within the scope of arsenic, if it was
Right.
below this threshold, that you're allowed to move it on the same roadway, like that is in the regs, you can move it to
Oh, you
close
can.
close proximity on the same
Okay,
roadway.
so we're good.
So moving it there
Okay.
would be okay unless it was proven that it was up in this other tier, which we're not gonna be doing soil
Right.
testing,
Right.
so,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so part of the conversation with Bob then. And number 5, Marie, that's you again. Did you follow up with BC Ferries? about-
No, basically I dropped the ball, because I decided at the time that we were gonna do it for something under 10 grand. And to go through the BC Ferries process was too big a deal. And now we've got Emma made application to TransLink for 50% funding, and she's got a budget of 36,000, and our contribution can be in kind.
Okay,
So if we provide $18,000 worth of labor, and they provide $18,000 worth of engineering fees and materials, we're okay with it. So,
I was talking to Emma yesterday because we don't know where we should put it in our budget request. So it is a capital expenditure, but I don't know how to, see, I don't know if we budget reality-wise, like what, you know, in hopes of getting the TransLink, because TransLink, we won't get the money unless it's an approved budgeted item. So it has to be in the budget.
for the full amount,
Well, that's what we were talking, we don't know where it should live. I mean, I said I can make sure it's in a capital expenditure somewhere. I mean, I can make sure it's in the budget.
Raj will be able to do that.
Yeah.
Figure out if we do it reality-wise or, but it has to be in the budget for Emma to get the TransLink funding.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so that's moving forward in
Yeah.
a different direction.
So, but again,
BC Ferries
so
out of
Marie,
this
Emma was saying, so what number are you thinking that we should budget for? That's what I'm a little bit unclear about.
good luck. I mean, so where we're at on it was the initial quote I got just for materials was about $6 grand. And so I said, let's figure 10 to 15 with volunteer labor building it.
Mhm.
Then the engineer got involved, and every time you say hi to him, it's another $800 or something, right? So we're probably going to be at $3,000 in engineering fees, and they changed it. The third iteration of it for the TransLink funding, they put end walls on either end, right? So we had this open building with the shear strength being taken across the beams at the top. Everything was fine. I go up to Mexico and I come back and there's a new structural drawing, which Mike Lightbody, our architectural guy, doesn't like. He said it just changes that building entirely if you have the two end walls.
Who's the they? Who's the they who changed it?
It was the
Alice?
engineer
Alistair.
Alistair something. The guy who works for him, Scott, I think his name is, or something Scott. Anyway,
And he changed
and I
it?
believe in conjunction with Gary Hander, because Gary was the guy that I handed this off to,
Oh, yeah.
and we needed one small change from what the structural was.
Right.
And like I said, then a month later, it's got end walls on it. And Mike isn't happy with that. So, back to your budget question, it depends on how carried away we get with getting the structural drawings done.
Yeah.
Yet again, another minor change.
Yeah.
You know, and for minor, it's only
Because
$800.
Emma
What
was,
the
we
hell?
were talking and she said that, you know, if we're gonna be based in reality, it's 36,000.
Then that's what should
Yeah.
go into
Yeah.
the budget.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
she is
And
at
that's-
the
And that's
36,000.
consistent with the original
Okay.
estimate of 10 to 15
Yeah.
with labor, and then the additional 3,000 in fees
Yeah.
at the project.
Yeah, because the labor on something like that, if you pay people to do it,
It's a lot.
there's a serious
Yeah.
amount of money.
Yeah.
If we get everybody doing it, you
Okay,
know.
yeah, for sure.
Okay, do we have any sense of when this is moving forward?
Well, she's supposed to have word back within a month on
On
whether or not TransLink is approving it.
And we're doing it regardless, are we not?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was always our plan to.
Yeah, it's because we're late in our budget, so this is what we're
Right.
talking about, so we're late in getting our budget adopted. So she's putting forward a good case, saying the mayor is, you know, championing this, you know, this initiative and blah, blah, blah. She's trying, but there is the chance, because our budget's not adopted, that we won't get the funding this year. There is that chance, she was saying. She's trying to make a good case.
Oh, I wonder if we can budget it anyway, as a freestanding thing.
We should.
Yeah, so I'll say 36,000, I mean, we'll just make a notation that, you know,
With
we're,
our understanding that 18K of that is in kind.
yeah.
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 Okay. Alrighty, item 6 is Melanie, I don't know if Kathy spoke with Jerry Muir, do you know?
Yeah, that would have been, oh.
Number
So
seven?
when I saw that note about the level 2 charging stations,
Mhm.
she said she was in a conversation with Jerry Muir, which
That's right.
led to that, so that was the first trigger for me, was maybe she had,
Okay. But we don't know.
maybe they got eclipsed
specifically.
by bigger news than banners.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, right. And so the little.
So does someone want to follow up with Kathy on that, or?
I can, or you can, what, who do you want to
Do
do?
you wanna-
Me?
If you could, that'd be great.
Sure.
Right, planters on the Shop Creek wall.
Okay. So I think we're doing the hydro seeding. So we're gonna do that as soon as it warms up a little bit. As I say, it's about $250 to do the hydro seeding, and we'll blast the whole thing, even though knowing that on vertical surfaces, especially if we get a big rain after we hydro seed, it's all gonna be washed away. But I think it will stick. We'll try to plan it accordingly and not, pray for it sort of a little warm spell, or dry spell a little bit. But that whole, that square of turf that
Right.
was laid, I mean, that will be all seeded again, and it hopefully will take this time.
Right.
Plus a little bit extending over towards the staircase up to the picnic tables, just because it's a little bit bald as well. So we'll see how that goes, because we Photoshop, this is the funny thing, and don't laugh at this picture, okay? So we just clipped some ferns and we stuck them on the don't laugh. It looks
Don't
great.
laugh.
It looks
That
kind
sentence
of,
out.
it looks kind of Star
Giggle.
Trek-ish. Star Trek-ish. So this is,
Oh my God.
no, it's,
How did you not?
so, no, this was just plunking some things down. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily look like it's Star Trek-ish. I don't know why I think
Well,
that.
I think it probably won't be blue in the background.
No,
That's our
So
first change. Change that to kind of a gray, greeny color.
anyway. So, I don't know.
I don't think it's that
Well,
bad.
I mean, the thing is,
It won't work, though.
yeah.
But I mean, the ferns obviously won't work in that type of config. They're either going to be everywhere or they're not going to be anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah, it's not, will just be just rock in between
Yeah.
it, yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we talked to Gary Anderson as well, and he can go in and put braces, and we can have little platforms and stuff. I mean, something like sword ferns would something like them, because they are so drought tolerant, because anything that's, I mean, even though it's not south facing the wall, I mean, it's gonna get dry. So, but anyway, I think the first step is looking at what it looks like once that grass takes hold after it's hydro seeded.
Yeah.
And, there is little spots in here that are starting to collect
Right.
a little bit of
Yeah.
debris. So, over time, I think already it's sort of starting to not look as much of as nice.
No, you're
as
just
it
getting
once
used to
did.
it.
Yeah. It's like the laundry room.
One point I want to
Anyway,
make
we'll
is, so the hydro seeding,
Time will cure it.
it needs to be saturated with moisture. And
When
then-
it's seeded.
No, beforehand.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So look at the weather, and the rain is going to stop on Friday.
Yeah.
Get it hydro
Yeah,
seeded on
yeah,
Friday,
yeah.
when the shotcrete itself is
It's
still wet
damp,
enough to
yes,
cause
and
the
then, but
germination.
we want to do it where there's not a huge downpour coming to wash it all
Exactly,
away,
so when
right? Yeah,
so it is
yeah.
a matter of timing
Well,
of when the break comes in the weather.
it's amazing, and it has to be a bit warm enough, it has to be warm enough, and, so by the, where we dealt with the, I know this is sort of going off on a tangent, but by the fire hall, the old fire hall, where we did the
Yes.
knotweed
Right.
removal, and we have to we're keeping at it, but it's actually going fairly well. So Carla seeded, so she seeded the first bit one day, and then she ran out of seed, or it was the end of the day or whatever. So she went back 2 days later and seeded the rest, same seed,
Right.
but that matter of 2 days, this germinated, this did not
The
germinate.
new didn't.
The new, well, no, but this
The
2
first part did.
The first part, because
Yeah.
it was just that change
The right
in weather.
conditions.
And it just
Yeah.
went
Wow.
down.
And it
that's
just, so
incredible.
but it's just like, and there's this line, and it's
Incredible.
like 2 days, difference of
Yeah.
2 days.
Oh, yeah, that's why.
So was it
again,
warmer?
The substrate has to be wet,
Wet,
right?
yeah.
Really wet. And the other thing is, we've got the fire department does have a mister, I think. They have this great big hosey thing that they put
Getting
down.
it down there.
Well, no, it puts down chimneys, right? For chimney fires, it's a thing that, it just cools a big area with a mist, right? Yeah, but I mean, it would be if we could talk them into doing a practice with this thing on that wall just before we lost our grass. You know, to
But given
soak it
to,
down.
like, just, you know, talking to Tom McComan and, you know, with vertical surfaces, it's really hard. I mean, there's not a lot of nutrients there for any seed to grow. So, but we'll blast
Right.
it and we'll see what happens and we'll make sure
Yeah.
the conditions are.
So,
But what'll happen is, hopefully, what'll happen is the moss will
I
grow
think
the
take over.
grass.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, the grass will just give enough feed for the moss. And moss, you know, we've got moss on hillsides here
Moss is
that
nice.
just
It
dries
looks
out
lovely.
to nothing every summer and
It's
comes
great,
back.
it comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the hydro seeding, will it interfere with the ferry traffic?
No, we can work around it. He can do it in that break. He lives in Bowen, I forget his name, but
Okay, great.
we'll make sure that it's quick.
Okay,
So,
okay, well, that'll be good.
yeah.
And it'll
If
be,
it around it, and we'll
Plan around it.
communicate that out.
and then there'll be work being done on the other side of the road on that new bike trail that's going in.
Right,
So,
right.
A new bike trail.
yeah, that, where they have raised the road and put the gravel between,
Along Area 1?
yeah, along Area 1.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
gonna be a bike path. And,
Is it not already?
it's gonna be more of a bike path. There's some, it's part of the Spirit Trail project that Emma is working on, so I'm not quite sure when that, do you remember when that was slated to be done? It's like,
No, I can
it's
do that.
March, I think.
Soon.
It's soon, yeah.
I think she might be looking at spring
So-
break time too. but-
Will it be paved?
It won't, I don't believe it's paved.
I
Is it paved?
think so,
It
because
is?
she wants to paint the markings
Oh,
on.
that's right, it's
Yeah.
gonna be paved.
So it's going to be 2 meters wide or something like that, that's the deal. Let's hope that we aren't accused of being too urban.
Well, it's to get the people off the road who come off the ferry and they're going up that.
Blocking the
hill.
traffic.
The entire
Yeah.
ferry line is behind them. And it's only,
Right.
and it's just, it's the first path of a paved trail.
Yeah, okay.
It's a start.
Cool.
Yeah. And that needs some attention. We're, in terms of getting the word out to the public, we're working through the communications committee.
Yeah, and I'm in there, I'm in these very rough notes, I'm not seeing a date, I'm seeing a lot of money, numbers.
It's gotta be after the next communications team meeting.
Which we haven't
because-
scheduled.
Which we haven't scheduled.
I don't have any date on this. I have an action item to reach out to the Squamish, get a new contact there.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's coming up. It's spring.
Right.
Okay, so number 9, I did get in touch with Pauline LaBelle and Jackie Massey regarding the Squamish sign location. So they know basically where they want to put it, which is consistent with what we want to do. So it's designed in conjunction with the existing Coral Louise sign. The issue is still, what's the name? And they have not got confirmation yet from the new Squamish Council as to what the preferred name is for Bowen. And they're hoping that they'll get it sorted out by June is National Aboriginal Day, and there's an event planned on Bowen for National Aboriginal Day, and it would be good to have the sign in place. So they're chipping away trying to get confirmation, and they're not getting it. So I figure another 2 weeks, and the municipality may want to actually, you know,
Send them a letter.
send them a letter and ask formally for confirmation, because we are preparing our community profile and we want to make sure that we're using the appropriate name. But to lift it up from an inquiry from the sign maker and Pauline to an official request from municipal
So
council.
where are they envisioning it exactly, Maureen?
Sort of above.
Like by our Welcome to Bowen Island
Yeah,
sign?
yeah, and there was some discussion about they'll get up there and they'll install it, and I said, no, you won't. So, you know, we'll install it for you, because that's not a good
Yes.
idea to have them hang over there. I
So
I think they'll
early
come
March.
back to us as they get closer to being ready to put it in place. And they won't be putting it in place on their own. They'll be doing it with Public Works and municipal input.
So, letter, March 15th? Why don't we put a date on it, that if we haven't received any information by a given date, we'll,
Yeah, I think that would be good.
and
Maybe
then,
earlier,
Yeah.
like there's no need for it to wait that long.
March 1st?
well, we'd have to, do we need a resolution of council of it or anything like that?
You know, it could come out of the council meeting on Monday because we've got the community profile on the agenda.
Yeah.
So,
But then we'd have to pull it from the consent agenda.
Read that.
But anyway, no, I mean,
We-
sure, you were the one who was going to speak to it anyway, right?
right.
I'm not sure actually if it is on the consent agenda.
I don't think it is. I think it's
Okay.
on the regular.
Yeah, it could be. So if you speak to it, you can say, by the way, I've got this little resolution of council saying,
Right.
please advise.
Okay, got it?
I got it.
Got it, great.
Maureen's gonna make a resolution.
And that will help Holly and Cora.
I know the whole Squamish Council changed pretty well, and then the two spokespeople now, one of them's last name Werner's, just because I know his mom, but he's quite, it's a very different tone to his communication that I've seen thus far. It's very active, very strong. It's the last communication person, spokespeople were a bit softer. So it's I think we're coming into a different kind of
Yeah.
age
Great.
That's
with
very
them.
We'll meet them at the house on, or at least some of them at the house on Forum, I'm assuming, because I haven't met any of the new council.
No. So is Davidson out? Ian Davidson? Wasn't he? He was there.
Campbell?
Yeah,
Or Campbell, rather.
yeah, there is a whole change, and even Chris Lewis,
Lewis is still
who
there.
he's there, well, but he's not an official spokesperson, as I understand it, any
Okay.
longer, which is too bad because he was. Well,
Good.
what do you mean? It might be a good succession, but he was fantastic.
Yeah.
Actually, he was a very good speaker.
And then there was the guy who retired, who everybody loved.
Gibby.
Gibby, yeah.
Yeah, he's
And he
still
was-
retired. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was the
Yeah.
communications guy,
Yeah,
right?
well, and he was really an economic driver at Gibby. He's very much pro sort of economics and
Right.
development, and yeah, but I think he's still in the shadows. I think he's still pretty
Okay,
active.
so
Hmm.
we will meet these folks soon.
Okay.
Then there's Councillor Mason's item. Do you know if anything happened on
Follow up with BC Ferries and NIMTAC has not met. Oh, they would have met in January. I was not here, but I will take a quick look at those minutes.
Why- so what was it? Oh, we were going to put something on the outside of the washroom saying, welcome to Bowman Island, established blah, blah,
Oh,
blah.
right, like
the What Islands Trust
yeah.
focused signage, because we don't have that down there. I had, the next item was to send a photo of, that was what they have at Denman Island, and I thought it was really, really positive, really,
Yeah.
really informative
Yes,
as well.
yes.
So, nothing there?
No.
Why don't we just, if somebody
Ferry
does,
refit committee. Sorry.
no, I was just going to say, if somebody does the wording for the sign, and then it shouldn't be that big a deal to get approval from BC Ferries to
I don't
plunk it on the outside.
I don't see why it would be. I mean, I've tossed this over to Sue Ellen a couple of times, asking her to come to a close with the Islands Trust, because they didn't want to do it initially because they were redesigning their communication materials. That's done. Let me follow up again.
I don't have anything in the notes.
But even if it's not Islands, even if it's just Bowman Island,
That we speak as a member of the Islands Trust
yeah.
and tell them, send us your logo.
Yeah, and then we'll put the logo on our sign,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
So you're saying.
So my action item is to write copy for Islands Trust sign and request from Islands Trust Communications Coordinator a copy of their logo, if required. We may already have it, Sophie may already have it. So maybe assign that to me and Sophie.
Voluntelling.
And we'll just get it done, because we've been talking about this too long.
Do you want, I'm just thinking of budget, I'm just so in the budget land
Yeah,
right
right.
now.
Right.
So, I do have, like for park signage, I have a carryover, it was a 2-year capital minor capital. So I could just make sure, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I think it'd probably be about, I would say, because it's a fair size,
Yeah.
right? So what, $750? I mean, I don't know, I'm just trying to think what she charged. She's very, if it's Coral doing it, very reasonable before. Or if we wanted to get a big metal one from a Shireen or some, I'm just thinking about costs.
Right, and getting it
If
in
I
there.
should make sure that it's in our, or if, is that something we could ask Ellen's Trust to? But then it might delay because their budget
It was
was a different
delay
cycle.
them, anytime anything's gone to them,
Mhm.
it's taken a while.
Yeah.
So $1,000, yeah, just
$1,000, I'll just-
$1,000 budget for.
For an Ellen's Trust sign,
ferry
I
ter-
might make.
Ferry terminal
And
signage,
we'll work within it.
yeah, municipal sign at ferry terminal or something like that.
And I'm not sure this is a Coral sign.
No,
The
yeah.
picture that I sent around of the Denman, I mean, it's big and it has a lot of words.
Right.
Yes.
And, you know, Coral's
Yes.
more
Yeah.
the signage.
So maybe it is a metal, like a big, I mean, it'd be custom metal signage
I
as a,
think more likely.
you know, and
yeah.
just print it like an official looking sign.
Yeah,
Although we could, well, put
Like
it
the
on
Bowen
that,
Trails
there's a
sign.
composite board type of thing.
or no, not the Bowen Trails, the Sea to Sky Trail. That one that's in the,
Right.
the
The
kiosk,
kiosk,
that kind of,
that kind of signage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or there's the rockfish,
Yeah.
that sort of similar.
yeah.
Yeah.
And would $1,000 do it for that?
Custom.
Yeah, it's a vinyl cut, right? I mean, you just send it off to.
I just, maybe I'll put $1,250.
Okay.
Just my initial, just my gut
And is
feeling.
that going into the,
I'll have to put it as a minor, I mean, does it fit within parks? Because we have that parks reserved for minor capital, right? We've got that $470,000 that's in that parks reserve fund, and it can be used for minor capital. So it's something maybe it could
Oh.
come from that, because it's kind of parks and environment, well,
Yeah.
it's parks and
yeah,
green space.
given the emphasis?
Right,
Yeah,
so I'll make sure it's in the
That'd be
budget as a
great.
minor capital.
that'd be great.
Okay, so, okay.
Okay, so I sent the photo, item 11, and I don't know